So just before we get started, if you guys are planning on attending the volunteer management session in the in-person conference, the context is going to be similar. So we kind of just recommend just going to that one. However, there are going to be some group session parts of this presentation, so you are more than welcome to kind of stay and learn from each other. The other kind of role workshops that are running are the President's Workshop, Fundraising Workshop, doing the recruitment, social media brand and press, and the volunteer one. So you're welcome to come to any of those, and you're welcome to leave now if you do want to attend the volunteer one at the in-person one. If not, we'll start. So the first thing first is how do you guys kind of feel right now about kind of recruiting volunteers, about kind of starting the year? Please feel free to kind of grab a notebook and pen and use the chat function. I really want to make this quite interactive. There's not many of you here, so hopefully you guys will feel quite confident about kind of using the chat or speaking up. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable, that's completely fine. But what we kind of want to know is kind of what do you kind of want to learn from this session, and kind of what do you kind of want to get out of it, and how you guys kind of feeling about the upcoming year. So it'd be great if you could maybe put into the chat maybe something that you'd be kind of happy about. Or shout out if not. Yeah, we'll definitely try and cover that. And if I don't cover it by the end, remind me, Juliet, if I'm saying that right, and I can fully go through that role with you, and hopefully kind of all the conferences and all the workshops to hopefully make you feel a bit more confident about it. But there's also a really good support system for any Maro committee members with your kind of Maro team, but also through National. So please feel free to reach out to us at any point throughout the session. If you guys keep on putting the things in the chat, we'll kind of continue through the presentation, and we can always come back to any of the questions that you have. So the first thing is how do you feel? Do you guys are you all nervous about it, or are you happy with it? Definitely. Okay, we can definitely achieve what the volunteers and the volunteer role. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why volunteers matter. So we couldn't really function without volunteers, so it's really important that we look after them correctly, and it's why your guys' roles are so valuable. As committee members, you'll be looking after the volunteers for Maro groups, and also we're here to help. So we're hoping this role will cover how to look after the volunteers, share some hints and tips, and look after your volunteer management. So why volunteers matter? I think the first one is that you need them for recruitment events. So volunteer recruitment is probably more important than ever. Lots of groups have had quite a depleted volunteer base, and it's absolutely fantastic that you guys have joined the committee this year, especially from a year where you probably only really saw events during COVID. But we're expecting that. So this year we're going to be really, really pushing and supporting you to build up your volunteer base. And together we can think about why someone might want to volunteer with Maro, and how else we can recruit dedicated volunteers. The next thing you guys really need to think about is resources and training. So it's really important that you train the volunteers so they can carry out their role with ease. And we've got a really good checklist that you guys can follow that will hopefully help you feel a bit more confident in training volunteers. The next one is retention. So once you've recruited them, you really need to think about how you're going to keep them. It's really important to keep the volunteers engaged throughout the year, and hopefully maybe get them onto committee in the future years. And the final thing is recognition, linked to retention. Volunteers are crucial to Maro. So actually recognising their time and what they do to help support you is really important, and can be a really good way of retaining volunteers. So the next things we're going to talk about is a bit more of the admin side. So it's to do with GDPR. So as part of the volunteer management, you're going to be handling a lot of data in reference to their volunteer data and application forms. So we do have to talk to you a bit about the UK GDPR. So the GDPR rules, when collecting volunteer data, it's best to kind of think about how you want someone else to treat your guys' data. So when you collect data, kind of tell people exactly what you're collecting and why, because some people might be a bit hesitant at the beginning of the year. Store the data really securely and only use it for the purpose that you told them you would. So if you only contacted them about volunteer events, make sure you only contact them about volunteer events. Use the data securely, so ensure you're using your Maro email addresses. And if someone asks you to stop contacting them, make sure you stop contacting them. And do not give the data to anyone else other than the people who they think you're giving it to. So just a bit more, when you're kind of talking about it, you can use this thing below which says, Maro are collecting this data on behalf of Bank Nolan, and we're only using it to contact you about Maro and Nolan activities. If you no longer wish to receive updates, please tell us why and we'll update our records. So that's a really good thing to kind of tell them when you're signing people up at Freshers Fair or at any volunteer recruitment events. So storing the data securely. As person who collects the data, and that's quite a big role of the volunteer management, you're legally responsible for how it's stored. So we'd like you to store all your volunteer data on Office 365, which you guys can access through your Maro email accounts, as it's really secure. You can also follow these tips for computer security. So ensure you've installed a firewall and virus checking on your computer. Make sure that your operating system is set up to receive automatic updates. Protect your computer by downloading the latest patches or security updates, which should cover vulnerabilities. Only allow your volunteers access to the information they need to do their role, and don't let them share passwords. It's one of the reasons we brought in the new kind of emails so that everyone's got their own personal email. It's because of this. And consider installing an anti-spy tool. Only store data on 365. Please don't store it in your personal files. Next thing is use it only for the purpose that you told them it is. So only use the Maro communications as this is what it is. And if you do change the purpose, make sure you ask them first. So if you told them you're only going to use it to contact them about volunteering, then don't send emails about other opportunities or things that other people have asked you to send it out. If you've got any questions, you're also always welcome to contact the Maro team about whether or not it's appropriate, or anyone from National who can always pass on your message. The next thing is using the data securely. So one of your committees should be put charge of data. If it's to do with volunteers, it's most likely going to fall onto you guys. And it should be password protected and stored in 365. When you're contacting your mailing list, follow these tips for email security. When you start to type in the name of the recipient, some email software will suggest similar addresses you've used before. Make sure you choose the right address before you click send. Also use blind carbon copy to send emails to ensure you don't reveal other addresses to other recipients. Don't use carbon copy. And be careful when using a group email address. Check who's in the group and make sure you want to send your message to everyone. And then I think finally, if someone asks you to stop contacting them, stop contacting them. You need to make sure you completely remove them from the volunteer database. But don't remove them completely. There's a risk you might want to contact them again if they get back on your list about their contact preferences. If someone asks an event to be removed from the register, then please contact the donor support team and they'll be able to help support you with that. And then finally, do not give the data to anyone else. If anyone outside of the Maro committee requests that your volunteer data, please contact the Maro team immediately and don't give them any data. And that's really, really important. And again, if you've got any queries, the Maro team are always there to help. And just ask them anything. We're going to keep on going. So the next thing is data management has been minimized due to digital data capture, but you deal with sensitive data at donor recruitment events. So all the details on the form should be kept completely confidential. You and the volunteers should not cancel anyone you know personally. And it's important for the donor to be honest about any medical problems they may have had in the past. And this is more likely if the confidentiality is stressed to them. And also you may have people tell you about their medical conditions, so make sure you keep that personal and confidential to yourself. Only discuss medical queries with other Maro members with the consent of potential donors. So if they're speaking to you at an event, but not on the other volunteers, ensure you ask them before going to speak to someone else to confirm if it's correct. So consent is really key. So now that was kind of the GDPR bit. I think if you're the same as me, it kind of can overwhelm you a bit, but the slides will be there to kind of look back, and I just want to stress the importance of just contacting the Bank Nolan team if you kind of want. So the next thing I'm going to do is just play this quick video, and I'm hoping it's going to work, and this kind of tell you a bit more about volunteering.
It's been a massive part of my university experience, and I'm really grateful for it.
The more people I met through Maro, the more people who signed up to register, it just kind of became a bigger and bigger part of my time at uni. My mum was diagnosed with a form of blood cancer about a year or so before my mum was told that she had a match, and he was a complete stranger. Like 14 years later now, my mum's doing really well. Every person that you speak to and sign up to the register could potentially be that one person that lives a life.
It's just been such a turning point in my life, going to university, seeing myself mature over the last 3 or 4 years in someone that can lead a group of people, and yeah, sign up over 1,000 people. It's been life-changing.
I'm really proud to be a donor. It feels absolutely amazing. What I'm doing here could help save a life, and it came from me just signing up at a Freshers' Fair, which I'm extremely happy that I did.
If it wasn't for Marrow at university, I would have never signed up for Anthony Nolan. I would have never had this amazing opportunity to help somebody else.
I had my transplant in November 2015. Marrow have been there with me through my whole journey from being diagnosed all the way through, and the work that they did with me to help me personally through it was incredible. There are so many more people to reach, but what Anthony Nolan have done already is just absolutely fantastic, and
The best thing I ever did at uni. It's so much fun, it's so rewarding. To speak to anyone that's welcome back and get involved.
Great, I'm glad that worked. So loads of groups have already made loads of great videos encouraging people to sign up to society, and they're really good to kind of post on your social media page around Freshers' Fairs and kind of welcome weeks, because although there's still a lot of in-person events, there's still quite a lot of virtual things going on. So you guys can either kind of create your own, or you're also welcome to use this video and kind of share why volunteering is so valuable. This video is available kind of as a file if you want it, and if you contact marrow@anthonynolan.org, they can send it to you via a file. So before we kind of talk about how to recruit volunteers, which I think is a really key bit of your role, we kind of wanted to talk about why someone would want to get involved in Marrow. If you're going to kind of recruit someone, you need to be able to talk about why someone should volunteer with Marrow. So it'd be great if maybe each of you could maybe post kind of why you think people might want to get involved in Marrow, so we can kind of come up with a list, and then we can kind of talk through it a little bit. Yeah, potentially save a life, definitely a really key one, always one I start with. I know for me it's like all the friends that I've made through Marrow is a really key one. Yeah, definitely. I really value the friendships and networks that I've kind of built through Marrow, especially being on national this year. Although I haven't met half of the committee, I've definitely got links throughout the country now.
And it's worth noting, sorry, just an interest piece, that Alex, who was in the video there talking about his mum having received a transplant, is, he volunteered through Marrow, was on national. He joined the Anthony Nolan staff team as Marrow volunteer support officer, and then took on the role as our online recruitment program lead, and he's actually just gone on sabbatical, but he's done incredibly well for himself. So there's no doubt that volunteering supports future opportunities, whether that be future learning opportunities or job applications, and Alex is a true example of that in real life. His experience led him to employment within an organisation that he's very passionate about.
Definitely. So these are some of the lists that we kind of came up with. So I think the first thing is that something for everyone. It's a really kind of leading on to the next point, it's really flexible. So you can fundraise, you can have Marrow nights out for social events, and you can also chat to potential donors. So I think it's such a varied volunteering. I don't think it's super flexible. You can help out at one event or all of them for an hour to 5 hours. And they can even join the committee if they really, really want to get involved. I think the next one is the places you're going. I think this is so true. You have the opportunity to go to conference, regional conference, but also help out at pride events, cheer at marathons, give talks at schools. Kind of there's so many different opportunities that you can get involved in, not just with Marrow, but kind of what Anthony Nolan offer. I think it was Newcastle Marrow like helped set up a cheering station at the Great North Run a couple of weekends ago. Volunteering will give you loads of transferable skills. I think it's a really good one you can stress to volunteers. So general public speaking used to be my worst nightmare at the beginning of last year. I've got very used to it now after doing about 16 different presentations, but it's a really good skill to learn. And just communicating to people on a general basis, asking people to sign up to the register, just really builds on your communication skills. The next thing is that charity works look great on your CV, especially for medical schools. So you can kind of find out what people are studying, kind of get interested in them, and let people know that we can provide them with references at any time to kind of help with job applications, for going on for further education. Friends, I think my entire friendship group is now based on part of my Marrow committee. And you might find friends for life across the country. I think I've never met the national Marrow team, but I think we'll all be friends for life now after the year we've had. I think the next thing is you'll be a network of over all of 50 different Marrow groups in different universities, and that's really cool. For those of you who haven't come to conference yet or only come, it's actually an amazing feeling when you kind of meet all the different Marrow groups across the country, and it's so nice, and you build friendships from that you'll be able to then contact, so then you'll know people from just literally everywhere. There's loads of new events and fundraising events to get involved in. So if you ever fancy skydiving, that's a really popular one to do with the fundraising team, or marathons in different countries. So just kind of watch your space and get involved. It also goes beyond uni. So there's Marrow alumni, and how Amy was talking about, there's actually job opportunities at the end of it. And then finally, I think the really big thing is we save lives by doing this. So the next thing is recruitment. We were going to put you in breakout rooms, but I think because there's just 3 of you, we'll just chat about here. So kind of what we want you to talk about is kind of how could you recruit volunteers this year? Have you guys thought of any ideas? I know 2 of you are quite new to it, but have you kind of thought of any ideas at the moment? Have you had your freshers fairs yet? Kind of what do you kind of think you're going to do for the year? So I know for me, Freshers Fair is a really key one. Yeah, Freshers Fair is next Thursday for us. We're just starting to make plans for it. And what kind of plans are you making for it? Are you going to have freebies? Kind of, how are you going to kind of engage people? Yeah, that's completely understandable. It's a bit of a challenge this year. I know it's been quite difficult with COVID, kind of managing and juggling everyone. And I often find that Freshers Fairs tend to be at very inconvenient times compared to our university schedule. At least it has always been for us. Well, we can talk about a few ideas that we kind of come up with, and hopefully this will help you guys kind of think about it. So the first thing is kind of social media. Fresh Fair. Yeah, freebies are a great one. Like posting it on your social media to say you have freebies often gets people there. And even if they don't sign up, by having a Marrow pen, people often can strike up conversation with other people, or if they leave Marrow pens around, people might start thinking about what Marrow is. It's a really good way of kind of striking up a conversation. With the Freshers Fairs, like having like superhero capes or making balloons, kind of really making yourself stand out, because quite a lot of people will have freebies. So it's just making yourself kind of stand out. The other thing is you can like bring a friend to kind of encourage people to bring someone else along. And once you kind of go to one event, people tend to come back because they just discover how nice the Marrow group is. Posters or flyers up. So I know that one Marrow group posted on their presence page about printing off business cards for free with a QR code of how to sign up. And that's a really nice way you can kind of put them around the library. And that's a really good way. Training session with pizza is always popular. I know there's been a few committee posts recently and people have said how they joined Marrow originally because of the pizza that was provided at training sessions. I don't know that you guys have heard about it, but you can do something called Fake Hype with your training sessions, where basically you trial the session that is actually short on space, even if it might not be, and it often encourages people to sign up and then go. And the next week thing is volunteering weeks, and it's a really good opportunity to kind of celebrate your student volunteers. And the one that's coming up is in the 7th of February 2022. So it's a really good one to try and plan ahead for. It's actually a really good one just before starting to think about committee members as well. So it's a really good time to push for committees. Okay.
Sorry, just noticed that Holly's here, which means it's probably my time to drop off, but just parting words, I'll just add to that, I know Refreshers was on there, but having worked with our wonderful Marrow community over many years, I think it's, and particularly now, really, really important to think about, there can be a tendency to think about volunteering at the beginning of the term and put a lot of effort and focus onto engaging volunteers at the start, and then when groups get really busy with recruitment and fundraising and all that kind of really dynamic, exciting stuff, it can tail off a little bit. But in terms of sustainability and building that community, your roles are so important as volunteer managers to keep that, you know, the priority focus on maintaining volunteer levels throughout the year, whatever those opportunities might be, refreshers or volunteering weeks, and yeah, to push for that in the group, I suppose, as donor recruitment and fundraising can take over, because none of that can happen without those wonderful volunteers that you're supporting. Right, on that, I am going to jump off. So enjoy the rest of the evening, and thanks, Zoe, you're doing a grand job.
Brilliant, thanks, Amy. Cool, so the next thing we're going to quickly talk about is kind of resource and training. So hopefully you've now got quite a good volunteer base, and don't stress too much if you don't get, as Amy said, that many at the beginning, because I'm sure a lot of people will come throughout the year. The really key thing kind of once you've got volunteers is now training them. We've put together loads of resources to help you kind of run engaging and informative training sessions that have two main aims. The first one is to make volunteers feel really enthusiastic and passionate about the work of Marrow and Anthony Nolan. And then the next one is to get volunteers trained up in activities and procedures so they can confidently recruit potential lifesavers. So the presentation's on SharePoint, which you guys can access via your emails. And if you've got any troubles accessing that, Holly's definitely the person to go to rather than me. And you can edit it to make it relevant for your training session and group. So when introducing a volunteer, there's a few things you need to do, and we've got a really good, easy checklist that you can follow. So the first one to do is to sign them up to your group. So join a Facebook group or an email list, however you kind of want to manage your volunteers, just make sure it's the same process for any new volunteer. The next thing you guys need to do is ask them to come a Marrow volunteer on the Anthony Nolan website. That means that we can then send them a volunteer handbook with everything they need to know, including all of the boring stuff like volunteer policies, so that you guys don't need to worry about telling them about it. The next thing is to attend a virtual training session with your group. This can be done virtually, and it's simply just explaining about Anthony Nolan, the register, etc., to make them comfortable enough to recruit other people. This is where we were talking about possibly offering pizza vouchers or offering pizza and using the fake hype to encourage people to come. Make sure the training is really relevant to your volunteers' roles, because it'll be really important for the volunteers to see how they use the training and practice and the impact it will have. Make it fun. We often do role play at the one that we do at Plymouth Marrow, and it's always a really good laugh, especially if you kind of get the committee members involved. Get them to their first event ASAP. So we normally suggest, at least my group attends to the training about a week or two before our first event, as this means that people can kind of remember the training quite early on. Next thing is buddy them up. And this can be the same with committee members. If you guys are slightly nervous about starting off at the beginning, if you guys haven't done a face-to-face event before, buddy up with another committee member. It can be quite nerve-wracking when approaching someone for the first time, and it's a lot easier if there's kind of two of you together. So like, please feel free to kind of buddy up at all times if you want to. Is there kind of anything else you guys think is maybe essential for kind of starting new volunteers that I've missed? I'm sure Holly can add anything if I've missed anything.
I think that's perfect, to be honest.
Brilliant. So I think the next thing is a quick break. So we can quickly have a quick break if we want, but we don't have to have a long one as long as people, because I realise we've been a bit quicker through the activities. So if we say maybe we'll come back at 6:35 rather than 10 minutes. Cool.